trailing behind, but he will participate with y'all, and he will be recording all of this for posterity. Maybe a few more seconds, and then we'll get started.
I did touch the board, so we're ready.
We're good? All right. So good morning, and you are in the session for compliance, LEA designee, and the assessment center. So at any time during the presentation, if you have any questions regarding any one of these topics, by all means, go ahead and ask. My name is Sam Avalos. I'm the special education coordinator that supervises the diagnosticians and am in charge of evaluations. So today's overview, we're going to be looking at the compliance and the indicators. We're looking at our LEA designees, our assessment center that we are creating for this coming school year. And we're going to be providing you a basic understanding of compliance, the LEA designee, and how the assessment center will support the campus. Some of the things that we're hoping that you'll learn from today's experience is, what are the indicators if you don't know? How are we compliant with them? How do they affect me? How does it affect our district? In regards to the LEA designee, what are they? Who are they? And what are their responsibilities? And last, the assessment center. What is it? Where will it be located? And how will the students be evaluated? How will each one of your campuses receive the support and guidance that you so desperately need? And how can the campuses support the evaluators to help this venture be successful? So first off, with compliance and the indicators. As you all well know, the district does receive a report every year on the indicators from the state. The state has a state performance plan and a measure of the annual yearly progress. Within that report, these items are addressed. Each of the indicators is listed, and there's a very thorough review of each one of them, an explanation of the data and information from current years and previous years. The state indicates to us that we must meet compliance in all of these areas. That we need to meet these indicators with 100% compliance. And we want to note to everybody that over the past 5+ years, we have slowly been increasing our compliance rate from 0 to 100%. The next couple slides are going to indicate the indicators that the state does designate that we look at. And in this particular slide, these 8 indicators are addressing FAPE and the LRE. And for those of you that don't know what FAPE is, again, free and appropriate public education. LRE, within the least restrictive environment. So indicator 1 deals with graduations. So for those of you in the secondary realm, this hits home right away. So we are definitely looking at all those students who are graduating. Indicator 2, the dropout. 3A, the district's meeting of their AYP and their AMOs for the disability subgroup. 3B, participation for students with IEPs, again, in the LRE. 3C, proficiency for students with IEPs. 4A and 4B. I'm noting that these are in red because we're going to highlight these and talk about these here in a little while. But they address suspension and expulsion. And this is something that's important for all of us to know, because as we do know, we have what we'd like to call an end-day rule for suspensions. And I know a lot of secondaries, we're looking at manifests, at those manifestations, and this is something that we want to keep in mind. For our elementaries, we don't normally see too many manifestations. We don't see students going over that 10-day suspension, but when we do, again, this is areas that we need to discuss and keep in mind. For 5, is education environments. 6 and 7, are discussing preschool, the environment and their outcomes. And then 8, obviously, is going to be the parent involvement. Indicators 9 and 10 are talking about disproportionate representations. 1 is specific to special education or specific disability categories. 11, indicator 11. It involves child find, and this does affect every one of y'all. This is what is more commonly known as the 60-day. We have an evaluation that we're looking at. Again, 60-day timeline is what we're talking about here, and we will be discussing this at length here in a bit. These last few, 12 early childhood, 13 secondary transition, 14 post-school outcomes, 15 resolution sessions, and 16 mediation. We have noted that indicator 12 for early childhood is an important area, as all of the indicators, but again, we'll be addressing more of that here in a bit. And the last one is 17, the State Systemic Improvement Plan. So when looking at indicators 4A and 4B, the suspension and expulsion disproportionality between the gender and the ethnicity is what we're looking at. We're looking at all of the students who have been suspended, who have been expelled from the school and the school district. And the state is looking at, for example, students that were Hispanic. And of those students that were Hispanic, what percentage or how many were male? Or how many of them were African American? How many were female? We must make sure that when we're looking at our discipline referrals as administrators, that we document them within the system as soon as possible. This plays a vital role when measuring the disproportionality that the state looks at. When we don't, then what ends up happening is the information that's reported to the state, sometimes, if not often, is skewed. And it does show that there is a huge disproportionality, that we do end up having a lot of Hispanic males that have been suspended or have been expelled. When in reality, when we start looking at the course of the entire district, at who's been expelled and suspended, it may come back and be evened out, that there really isn't that. But because we haven't documented it, then that's where we get slammed. That's where we get into issues with the state. So please, we must ensure that all our administrators are documenting. Indicator 11. So indicator 11 deals with evaluations, as noted earlier, the 60-day timeline. And an evaluation is that initial process, that initial provision of special education that must be conducted before placement of any student. And that's what the law says. So federal law has listed. It is within that realm of child find, that initial evaluation, and as noted earlier, the 60-day evaluation. And it comes from referrals. And those referrals can be generated by the SAT team, which many of them are. You guys do a heck of a job going through the process of providing those interventions and support for the students that need it. But then it also comes in the form of the parent letters. And more often than not, I'm sure many of us can look at the parent letters and say that the majority are gifted, and that's okay. That's still within the rights of the parents. We still just need to make sure that we're following the SAT process. Now, the question that many administrators ask me is, what does that have to do with me? Well, with the campuses, it has to do plenty. The minute that a parent signs permission, an initial permission to get evaluated, that starts the clock. This past school year, diagnosticians and evaluators were informed the minute that the school received a parent letter, that starts the clock. When that clock starts, the state is looking to see, have they met that indicator? Have they met the 60-day timeline to have them met and the evaluation complete within 60 days? Question?
You're talking permission to test?
Yes, sir.
So the permission to test the day that that is signed, you have 60 days to file it.
Correct.
Okay.
And again, like I stated before, with the parent letters, because this is the one that hurts us many a time. With the parent letters, the guidance that the evaluators were given, the minute that they received it, whatever it was dated, that's what we're going off of as the start date. So, there have been times,
The letter or permission to test, which one?
yes. So, this past school year, it was the letter. So the minute that you received that letter from the parent, and you stamped it with the date as being received, that's when the clock started.
But now it's the permission to test?
Right now, it's in discussion, are we gonna continue with that process?
Okay.
But the law does state that it's when the parent receives informed consent. So the diagnostician, the psychologist can come to the parent and sit down and give informed consent, and that's when it would start. Okay? So chances are, that's where we'll be going off of. We wanna make sure parents understand what they're getting into. A lot of times, parents don't understand the processes, and they don't understand that the SAT process is actually there to help their child and get them going where they need to be. So they'll stop, they'll go through the process, and then they'll test. So once that starts, then yes, the clock starts. And the state is looking at us. And we are looking at that every single day. Every morning, the first thing I do is look at that. Get up out of bed and look at my list and see who assigned a new one, who do we have to keep tabs on. So bear in mind, this is a very important one, a very important indicator that we've been looking at for many years now.
So tell me what finalized is. What is finalized? IEP, DNQ?
Met.
Okay.
So once the evaluation and the MET have been held, that's finalized. The evaluators were informed this year, this was something new and it has shown improvement, that once the MET was completed, that ended the clock, that stopped the clock. The law states that in New Mexico, it is the evaluation, the last day of the evaluation. And that was new guidance that was recently given this past spring. So that's when it stops. Concerns that we've had, well, we've had concerns throughout the entire year that we have school staff telling parents, write a letter, it'll go faster, it'll make things quicker. And that's actually on the contrary. I'm here to tell you that that doesn't happen. What it actually does is, it, depending upon the type of situation, it may actually prolong it. Federal law does state that in order for a child to meet criteria for specific learning disability, that they still have to show and prove that there were interventions that were implemented during that time period. If there were no interventions, if the student never went through SAT, the evaluators cannot consider SLD for that particular student. So what ends up happening? We test, we go back to the parents, whether or not the child showed that, yeah, they may have made it, we cannot consider qualification at that time. We have to push it back to the parent and say, parent, he does not meet the criteria for SLD, he needs to go into SAT. Then SAT needs to take over and start looking at interventions. Once that has been implemented, then we can come back to the table again and review and make a determination at that point. So in essence, what happens is, the process still remains the same. The length of time still occurs. It doesn't make anything faster.
Okay, so, but we still, if a parent comes to us with a letter, we have to go through the process of permission to test, or it's our discretion as to whether or not we keep it in SAT or go forward?
That's an excellent question. So I highly recommend that first that you talk to the parents about SAT and discuss with them the benefits of the child being in SAT. That way they can see that we are trying to make an attempt to find out, maybe it's just because he doesn't have glasses. Maybe it's because he needs to be closer to the front of the room. Maybe she just can't hear. Maybe something that parent really had no consideration of. And once they start to see some of those things and understand the importance of it, then maybe they'll say, okay, you know what, you're right, maybe we do need to wait. Let's go through this process first, let's get some interventions going, let's see how things pan out. If they're staunch and they say, no, I know my rights, I wanna do this, I want the letter, okay. They're right, that's their right, we're not gonna argue with them, we'll gladly take the letter.
Would the recommendation be the same for someone that is wanting their child to be tested for AES?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. When it comes to any special education student, we just wanna make sure that they're all treated equally, that they all understand the process. And again, we'll gladly take their letter and we will gladly test their student. That's not a problem whatsoever. The case in point is, what we want to make sure that we're doing is we're conveying these same feelings, these same information to our teachers. Because we still have teachers who have been in the system for many years and have understood the system to go faster when that letter is written. Years ago, yes. Since things have changed, it doesn't. The other concerns that we have is we often find out that this parent has concerns for their child, but we know nothing of it because we haven't identified it as staff, as teachers. Therefore, the student's not in the SAT process. He's not on our radar. She wasn't showing any difficulties in the classroom. So that is a concern because now the parent comes to us, we're not aware, but now we are, so we start the SAT process. And one of the most important ones is staff holding on to those letters. There are many stories I can tell you where I will receive a phone call saying, I have this letter that we just found that the teacher brought to me that she had in her desk for the past 3 months. Many a time that has occurred. So we will help give you some guidance on how to deal with some of those situations. As noted, that the letter starts the clock. We do have 60 calendar days from that letter, that date. And the evaluators, they have a calendar of evaluations that are organized. You guys have your SAT teams that have your own calendar of meetings that you have to hold. So when we start throwing in some of these letters, it is possible to work with, but it becomes a little bit more difficult. It's a little bit harder to manage. So we want to do what's best for the student. We just need to make sure that we do it in the appropriate fashion that's possible, within the realm of the law. And I wanted to show everyone where we've been, because I often hear from relatives, you need to remember where you came from. We started doing this many years ago, but the data, when we first started, wasn't very clean. At the very first time I saw the amount of students, the number of evaluations that were being sent to the state, we were talking 30, 40 evaluations for a school year. Now, for a district as big as Las Cruces is, can you fathom 30 to 40 initial evaluations for the entire district? No, I can see 30 to 40 maybe from one campus, but not from the entire district. So that goes to show you how dirty the data was. When we started to get a better handle on the data, the first time that we did it, we were looking in the realm of 450 initial evaluations. And at that time, it was an 86% rate that we were meeting indicator level, which means the other 14%, we didn't make it within that 60-day timeline. We were missing the indicator. The following year, we were up. But again, we hadn't hit 90. We're still in that 86 to 88 range. The 13-14 school year, that's when we finally broke into the 90% range. 14-15, this gives you an idea of how many evaluations there have been in the past couple of years. Approximately 740. Of those 740, we missed 26 students. 26 students. And the last year, we missed it with 13 students. So all year long, out of the 740 students between the past 2 years, it was just a small amount of students that we would miss. We either missed it by 1 day, which in many cases was the case, or we just flat out missed it by a huge gap. Currently, we're on track to meet it at 100% this year. So as you can see, we've slowly improved on indicator 11. Indicator 12, early childhood transition, we've met this compliance for the past 2 years. Did you have a question?
I have a real quick question about indicator 11, going back to the 60 window. The MET, because we talked about after testing is complete, the MET usually won't get finalized until after parents come in, right? And the DIAD goes over the MET?
Right.
So that's when it's finalized, after the parent meeting?
After you meet with the parent.
Okay, so it's not just about the testing, but after the test results
Right.
are shared with parents?
And do remember that the state has given us new guidance that it's at the end of the evaluation date, but we have chosen to use the MET and the evaluation date because from previous years, we were going just with the evaluation date and we were still missing. When we turned everything over to the MET and the evaluation date, it shows that this year we're pretty much at 100 at this point.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that, thank you.
So going back to indicator 12, early childhood transition, we've met it for the past 2 years at 100%. We must identify these students prior to their 3rd birthday. For both indicator 11 and 12, there are exceptions to the rule. However, the exceptions are very limited in terms of how the state looks at it. Either the student dies, the student moves, the parent wouldn't produce, those types of things. Those are the very minimal types of exceptions. And as noted, we have done an excellent job the past couple of years of making sure that we are identifying these students prior to their 3rd birthday. The LEA designee, it is an individual that you, as an administrator, designate. But according to federal regs, it's coming directly from the IEP team portion in the law. It is a representative of the public agency, and the public agency is the school district. And this person is qualified to provide or supervise the provision of specially designed instruction to meet the unique needs of children with disabilities, is knowledgeable about the general ed curriculum, and is knowledgeable about the availability of resources of the public agency. As noted, it is the school district and the campus. It's identified to special education, you will identify to the special education department these individuals who are the campus designees. We do this at the beginning of every school year. There's a form that you fill out and it's provided to the special ed department. These individuals are authorized to make decisions on the LEA, the campus's behalf. And please bear in mind, these individuals that you are choosing, you're choosing them with the understanding that they will commit resources for your campus and the school district to provide to these special education students. We want to make sure that the LEA designee can ensure that whatever services are set out in the IEP will be provided. Failure to include an individual with the authority to commit these resources has been found to be a denial of faith. So in other words, the designee and or the administrator needs to be there for the entire meeting. They need to understand what they're getting themselves into. In summary, for the LEA designee, they need to be knowledgeable, able to commit resources, ensure implementation, and be present. The assessment center. Where is it located? How will the students be evaluated? How will you all at the campuses receive the support, and how can the campuses make this successful? Well, right now, we're going to be located in central office, in the special education office. The assessment center will be able to provide evaluations to students at centrally located place or at the campus. So as it stands right now, we do have some rooms available to diagnosticians to do evaluations downtown. But we also are knowing that we won't be able to pull everybody downtown. So some of the campuses have been gracious enough to say, the room that you were in, we're going to leave it as is, you can still have use of that room as an evaluation room. That is my recommendation to campus staff to help support your evaluators at your campuses. Now, this assessment center, it will be staffed with at least 1 to 2 diagnosticians at all times. We will be able to assess students at a faster rate. We'll have multiple diagnosticians available to support situations when necessary. You'll be able to call the assessment center at any time to get guidance on situations. And our diagnosticians will support scheduling of meetings at the beginning of the year. They're going to receive a directive to go to the campuses the first couple days, sit down with your case managers and other related service personnel, and start talking about NORDs, start talking about annuals. Who needs to have a reevaluation done? Do I as a diag need to reevaluate? Nope. Speech? Yep. Okay, so we need to go ahead and do a formal evaluation. So there needs to be that discussion going on with the case managers and the evaluators. Once that has been determined, then they've been asked to bring back a calendar to me. They're going to show me that yes, indeed, that they tentatively scheduled with the campus dates for IEPs, dates for when they're going to hold NORDs, dates when annuals will be done. That way you as the campus administrator will have, again, a tentative schedule of when everything's happening. So we won't have, and shouldn't have, any case manager who waits till the last minute to plan something out. It's been planned from day one. They should be able to look at that with you and say, yep, it's a go. Evaluators throughout the district will know that they have to be at that meeting because it was planned months in advance. The assessment center itself, as noted, there should be at least 1 to 2 individuals there at all times. They are going to be in regions, so we're looking actually at more than 1 to 2. We're looking at anywhere from 4 to 6 diags downtown on any given day. So 4 days out of the week, they will be servicing and evaluating students at the campuses, and 1 day they'll be back at central office to support anybody that needs it, as well as write reports. So campuses can provide support to make the center successful by ensuring evaluation staffs continue to have a place to test. They support multiple evaluators' needs in order to support your campus. And our evaluators will provide to y'all the continued support with the student assistance team, continued guidance on difficult IEPs, and continued support of new students. Now you're asking how? Well, we're dividing the assessment center into regions. As noted, there'll be anywhere from 4 to 6 diags in a region. And here in a bit, you'll see your region, so you'll be able to have a better idea of how things will work. But we will have multiple diags in that region. So let's say for your region. Right now you have 1 diag, but you may see in your campus all the diags from that region going in and testing all the students all at once, and then you may not see them for a while to evaluate, okay? You also will see that you can set up a recurring appointment with a specific diagnostician to go over and support you in the SAP process. So we will have specific diags that will go into your campus and support you on SAP. So on Fridays, I can go in before your SAP meetings for the following week. We can review the information that you have. I can answer questions about maybe this is some interventions that you might want to try for this student. This student is good to go. I can make sure that we get a permission to test. This one, nope, you still have some time to go. So we can have that collaboration time to go over all that. And that would be a reoccurring appointment with that particular person. Because we will have a diagnostician solely in charge of SAT and providing that region the SAT support that they need. We'll also have the ability to call somebody, any diag, the assessment center, on transfer students. What are we doing? How do we do this? Can somebody come down and support us? Definitely. We will definitely drop what we need to do and get down there to help you out. And the gifted referrals. Part of the goal with the gifted referrals, because we've had so many over the course of the years, is that when the parent comes to you, because many a time, that's what it is, it's a letter. Parent comes, brings you a letter, you can say, hold on, let's check his vision and hearing. Yep, her vision and hearing is great. Take this letter, we can take it downtown. There's diagnosticians downtown. If you take your child, they'll evaluate right then and there. That way it eliminates you from having to receive that letter. Now, that's what our goal is. That's what we would like to see happen. That way you're not having to deal with letters, it cleans your hands of it, they bring it to us, we test, and we move forward, specifically with the gifted. Can we do that with the other academic referrals? You betcha, we can. But then we go back to that process of the student's never been in SAT, so we'll still test, but it's going to turn back to the campus to go through SAT. The preferred method for letters is to send it downtown, but in the event that that doesn't work out, again, we're sticking with the same process that we did this year. Date stamp it, make a copy for the SAT file, make a copy for the parent, and I always recommend keeping an additional copy for an evaluator. Send the original downtown. So here are the regions. We have Region 1, which includes Mesilla Park, Mesilla Elementary, Tombaugh, Fair Acres, Picacho Middle, and Zia Middle. Now, when our task force got together to put these regions together, we looked at a variety of information. We looked at the number of students at the campuses, we looked at the number of referrals coming to the campuses, and we looked at the geographical location of each of the campuses. The last thing that we considered was making sure that this all fit in line with, is this elementary going to this middle school, is this middle school going to this high school? We wanted to keep that nice and clean. But as you know, there's always going to be bumps, and we did the best that we could to make sure that we try to keep middle schools receiving their elementary students. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do it consistently. Region 2 is a great example of that. We have Alameda, Loma Heights, Sonoma, Sierra Middle, and Camino Real. Sonoma and Highland are two of our biggest schools in the district, and they do have a high number of referrals. Alameda, on the other hand, is one of our smaller campuses, and over the course of the past few years, we haven't had a need to have a full-time diagnostician located there. They've been there half-time. Sierra Middle School has high numbers as well as Camino, and Loma Heights. Loma Heights was one of those that was a part-timer. So we had to balance out this situation and making sure that we covered all of those campuses in order to address the needs that they had. It was a very difficult process, and the diagnosticians and the task force that were part of this, they worked very hard at making sure that we had some equality for everybody. Region 3, we have Uni Hills, Conley, Hillrise, Hermosa, Valley View, BTW, and Lynn. For Region 4, I call this the J region. We have East Picacho, MacArthur, Doniana, Columbia, Central, and Vista. I call it the J region because geographically, if you get in your car, you're driving a J. And Region 5, Highland, Monte Vista, Sunrise, Cesar, Desert Hills, and Mesa. Now that covers your elementaries and middle schools. Your high schools, well, they're just a tiny bit different. Their diagnosticians are still coming downtown to support us and support you. But because of the high volume of evaluations that they end up doing, they have an individual that will be there, but will also be at the assessment center. So we wanted to make sure that there was some equality between the elementary and middle, as well as the high school diagnosticians. These last few sites that we have, you don't normally hear too much about, but there are alternative sites like Rio Grande Prep, MVLA, the early college, Del Rey, the detention center. These sites, they're going to be absorbed by the high school. So, for instance, if we have a student at early college high school that came from Oñate, then the DIAG from Oñate will be covering that evaluation. And that will apply to all of the high schools. And the last region is private schools and White Sands. Private schools, there's quite a few of them, and from time to time we do have evaluations that end up having to be conducted. Last year we conducted 8 evaluations just from private schools alone, which is, for that group, it is quite a bit. But they do require a lot of our time. I want to make sure that everybody understands that we wanted to make sure we addressed concerns that diagnosticians have. We met over the course of the year, hearing their concerns of what was occurring throughout the year. A lot of their concerns happen to be about workload, equality, the after-hour work. Many a conversation I had with a diagnostician that would come to me and say, I work from 8 to 4 o'clock, from 4 to 6, I'm home with my family, whether I'm getting meals ready with my spouse, getting kids off to practices, or doing other family-related activities. Then from 6 to 7, again, I may get into the computer and start doing something. 7 to 10, I'm doing family-related activities. 10 to 12, I'm writing reports. 1 o'clock, I'm going to bed, and I'm back at it 8 o'clock. And then, on the weekends, well, it just depends. Whenever I have a chance, I'm back on the computer, looking at the test results, writing reports, and this is a day in, day out from our diagnosticians. So rather than having them work constantly, because if you start to look at how much time they're sleeping, how much time they're spending with their families, they're spending more time working than they are on their own personal time. And that was a complaint and concern that they brought constantly. So when they addressed it with the task force, it was the diagnosticians themselves that said, we need to come to a better understanding of how we can support, and the assessment center is going to do that. That was their number one concern. Their second concern was the equality. I may have a campus like Loma Heights, Mesilla Park that doesn't have a high number of referrals, but then I have Sonoma that's got gobs and gobs and gobs. This individual may have 2 sites, but isn't doing as much as the individual over here. So they often felt that this person got the better end of the stick, whereas this person was working 10 times harder. So we needed to make sure that we were giving some equality there and handing out equal number of evaluations. And the indicator. The diagnosticians were extremely concerned with knowing that in order to be 100% compliant, that meant that there was some priorities that they had to look at. And gifted evaluations do not fall under that indicator 11. Indicator 11 is a federal mandate. Gifted is nowhere in the federal guidelines for a disability or exceptionality. So a lot of times what ended up happening was all these gifted referrals, and I'm sure you've seen it, start getting put off and put off and put off. And by the time they get to it, maybe the parent's already mad. They've come to see you numerous times because nothing's happened. I get a phone call, and then we start trying to figure out how we're going to resolve it. So in looking at all of these things, they made the decision, based on the information and data, that the assessment center was the best way to go. Staffing, as with you guys, is a concern and issue with us. This past year, we were down 3 diagnosticians the entire year. So in summary, what are the indicators? given you all 17 that are there. I've given you highlights on 4A, 4B, 11, and 12. How we can be compliant with them, specifically with indicators 11 and 12, making sure the evaluations and IEPs are completed in a timely fashion. How does it affect me? Well, as noted, a lot of times you'll receive letters, parents will sign permission, and that's where everything starts. How does it affect our district? Well, if we miss one at one school, it affects the entire district, because we have to have that 100% compliance throughout the entire district, not just in a couple campuses, but every single campus. LEA, what are they? The designees are the individuals that we've elected as administrators to represent our campuses, that can allocate resources to students, that have an understanding of the general ed curriculum, and can provide specially designed instruction. The assessment center, where is it? Downtown. How will the students be evaluated? The same way, either at the campus or downtown. How will you guys receive support? In the same fashion, just with multiple diagnosticians. How can you help? Continue to provide the support that you have. And I wanted to make sure that your day ends on a good note. There's a lot of renewable energy out there, and I think all our coordinators do an excellent job of providing that. Do y'all have any questions? No questions about the assessment center, about the indicators, how we're going to support, who you're going to have?
How far out are the diagnosticians gonna plan? Are they planning, they're talking like 2 months in advance? My only concern is, a lot of times those IEPs are planned, like, let's say 3 months out in advance, and then parents, parent has to be present. So we'll get a lot of times where parents aren't able to make it, and then we have to readjust, reshift, and it kind of throws everything off. So how far in advance were you looking at diagnosticians planning those when they go into the case management?
Excellent question. So the NORDs are our primary target. And those ones we're looking for the entire year, because we need to be planning to determine if we need to test or not in a timely fashion. A lot of times what happens is they look at the NORD and they say, okay, next month we have to test. We need to know at least 6 months ahead of time. So for the fall, we should already know who we're testing, because you would have held the NORDs this past spring. Annuals, I'm asking that they look at it for the spring, for the fall semester only. The understanding is this is tentative. We know that parents are going to cancel. We know things are going to change. But on the evaluator's part, it gives them an idea of, I've got to have my evaluation done by this date. And they're not prolonging it. They're having to jump and get started now. Other questions? A lot of what I found is if our staff knows that they have a deadline to meet, then they jump on it and they get it done and it's out of the way. And that was something that we noticed this year. We made a recommendation to have all reevals done by the end of February, beginning of March. And boy, oh boy, that was a huge help, because all those initials that came through in March, April, they're able to take care of. I only had 2 reevaluations that needed to be tested for the summer. Last year, I had 40. Gifted this year, I have 45. Last year, I had 50. So they're still within that realm.
Are you gonna have diagnosticians through the summer as well?
No. No. Unfortunately, we only get diagnosticians when we absolutely have to. Right now, I have 3 that are testing, but that's because we had 10 academic initial evaluations that we had to get done. So we don't normally, unless it's an absolute necessity. And the same applies with speech therapists and psychologists.
Sammy, I know that with SAT, it's a time issue, because you have SAT meetings, and your committee, you have the packet, you have everything that you need to put together. So what kind of support can you guys give us regarding the 60 days, yet you have to compile the packets, there's a issue with getting that information, setting up the SAT meetings that includes the parents and the data and so forth. So
So my recommendation, and this has been happening at a couple campuses already, what is happening is the diagnostician has a revolving appointment with the administrator, the set chair, whomever it may be, and they go through all the files, and they talk about particular students. That way the information is known prior to the actual meeting. And this applies with not only the diagnostician, but other individuals, other related service, maybe speech needs to be there. And they'll talk with the set chair, and they'll look and see, how can we help you, how can we support you? And they do this one of them was every Wednesday, and the other one was every Friday. And that way, they can give you guidance in terms of, this is what the teacher needs to provide to you. This is what's missing from the packet. It's a good packet because it's got good information, but we're still missing X, Y, and Z. If you can get all this together, then I'll definitely take it and we will test it. The other thing that we're looking at is making sure that when we do provide you that type of support, if one comes to us, a SAT packet, that is not it's not a packet that has every piece of information, then we'll make sure that we send at least 2 people back to talk to you and say, look, these are some of the key elements that are missing, and this is why it's missing. Here's some information to help guide you along. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide you more support in that sense, but it's going to be a little bit harder in the sense because you're going to have to make sure that you're scheduling some of this time to get them in there. Okay? But we want to make sure that you do get what you need. Now, as far as the 60-day timeline, as you all know, the only individuals that can generate that prior permission is going to be the evaluators. So when they get that packet and they say, yep, Ramon, this one's a good one, when's the date, the next one, I'll be there, great. Or some cases, some of them say, here's the letter, go for it. As long as they're aware of it and they can talk to parents, we're good to go. Okay? Alrighty, thank you all. Off to your next one.
4:38.